Hi, everyone. We are here. Hold on one sec. I am here to kick off the new year with everyone talking about the anti-inflammatory plate and how food communicates with your body. So I'm going to share my presentation and turn this down a little bit more. All right. So I'm Chef Jessica VanRoo, and I am here just to guide you through how you might want to understand the anti-inflammatory plate a little bit more. So the first thing is, why does inflammation matter? So I guess the first question would be, what do all of these diseases have in common? And they all share chronic low-grade inflammation as the underlying driver. So we need to remember that not all inflammation is bad. Acute inflammation is obviously what helps us heal from injuries, but chronic low-grade inflammation that persists for months or even years is what we're trying to avoid. And so what we're learning is that your diet, specifically the pattern of your diet, not one specific food, is what's contributing to a lot of these chronic diseases. So if you've been in our kitchen before or know what it is, we are a culinary medicine test kitchen here. And one of the things that we try to do is teach people about how food affects their overall health. So every meal then sends a biochemical signal throughout your body. And these are some ways that it does it. So hormones, obviously, through insulin to help you regulate your carbs, to regulate your blood sugar. And then you've got your immune cells, your gut, which we talk a lot about in here with fiber and all the things that you can do to improve your gut. And then obviously gene expression. And that's epigenetics that we're talking about. The food that you eat might not change your DNA sequence, but it influences what genes are active. So for example, polyphenols in plants can activate protective genes. That's why when you look at it, you can put two identical twins on on different diets, but because they're identical twins, you would assume that they would be able to process things differently or the same. What we've learned is that even identical twins on different diets will have different gene expressions. So what this really shows us is that the body responds to the patterns of what you're eating, not just that one salad or avoiding that one steak. It's a pattern of eating that's beneficial for your overall health, not just two things a day. So we like to talk about what you should eat, but we never tell you what you should not eat. I think taking things away from people becomes harder than adding to it. So if we were just to tell people, hey, you can have vegetables and fruits, you can have protein, you can have whole grains, eating becomes a lot easier. And I'm not saying that not that everybody would take this and apply it correctly, but at least it's a base of what you should do. So what we like to say is half the plate is vegetables. And again, you can choose what kind of vegetables you want, but then a quarter of that plate should also be carbs. And when we talk about carbs, that's when it gets kind of touchy with people. We're talking specifically about whole grains. And so obviously not refined carbs such as pre-made pasta or white rice. Those things we should probably stay away from, which makes you realize that some of these whole grains actually fall into the vegetables and fruits as a legume. And so that carb and vegetable piece can almost be added together. we separate it out just so people know what else should be on their plate other than vegetables and protein. And so if you look at it, we're going to be working with teff today, but there's different types of protein. There's different types of grains that you can use, quinoa being another one, and they all add extra fiber. So what's cool about these carbs that we try to introduce people to are that they're very high in fiber. So it becomes a way to also protect and heal and strengthen your gut. Then we have healthy fats, and we'll go into fats a little bit more later, but obviously different fats have different reasons and different uses. And so they should be used in the right way for the right things. And then we've got protein. Protein's going to be debated a lot. We actually have Dr. Karen Lindsay will be speaking, I believe, in March about protein because it is something that a lot of people have questions about. And I think that what happens with the diets, the American diet, is that we constantly think protein has to be a meat source when it can be, again, legumes or other types of vegetables that are higher or can be high in protein as well. So let's talk about some plants. And so plants are incredibly important because when you eat fiber from fruits and vegetables and legumes, you actually, as a human, can't digest it. So your gut bacteria is what's actually doing the digesting for you. And so they're short chain fatty acids, and they're important because they help reduce the inflammation. They strengthen your gut barrier, and they communicate with a lot of the immune cells that you have. The research does show that 8 grams an 8-gram increase in daily fiber correlates with a 5 to 10% reduction in cardiovascular disease. So it's important to increase that fiber, and it will help with your overall risk. The average American only gets 15 grams of fiber daily, and we need about 25 to 38 grams of them. So then we've got also phytonutrients, and those are the colors. So we talk a lot about the colors of the rainbow and eating the colors, and every single color has a benefit to it. For example, red in the tomatoes, it's the lycopene, and it reduces oxidative stress. The compound that makes broccoli bitter, that sulfurane, I can never say it right. It activates detoxification pathways. And the stuff that makes your breath stink from garlic is actual antimicrobial and has anti-inflammatory properties. And so even though foods might look a certain way or smell a certain way, they're actually there to help us in different varieties. And so what I don't like people to avoid are white foods, specifically things like onions or potatoes. Just realize that they all have a benefit. When we talk about potatoes, I think the main thing to remember is just to eat the skin too. That the skin of a lot of these foods could contain a lot of the fiber that you need. And so protein is also incredibly important. And like I was saying, protein does become debated a lot, like the fats is these days. And Dr. Karen Lindsay will be presenting in March specifically about protein. But what I think is really cool about protein is that the reason why we do it is for not only these 3 reasons, but it does definitely help blood sugar stability, satiety, I can never say that, feeling full, and weight management. And then also it helps preserve lean mass. But again, we often think that protein has to come from meat, where it doesn't. It can come from other things. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but kind of looking at what kinds of legumes or vegetables can possibly provide us that protein that we need. And then we get into fats. So fats can become really interesting, especially I like talking about fats, as you can tell from all my talks, actually. So fats are important because in cooking, fats are what give us flavor. When you buy a piece of beef, for example, you're actually paying for what we call marbling in the cooking world, but marbling is just fat. But they've put a really pretty name to it because buying beef that has more marbling will provide more flavor. So fat does create more flavor for things. It's how you use fat and what types of fats that you use that I think are really important. So what I don't want people to think is that they should just use olive oil. Olive oil has its place, but so do other fats. And so the most anti-inflammatory, obviously, we know are omega-3, and that you get from like salmon and other fatty fish. Extra virgin olive oil, incredibly good for you. Low heat cooking, dressings, things like that. And then you can get other fats from actual food, avocados, nuts, and seeds. Now, I'm going to go back to the olive oil really quickly. You need to know your source too. So if you don't know where you're getting your extra virgin olive oil from, you don't know if it has been processed to a point where you don't want to be using it. For example, adding the detergents to it. What you want to make sure is when you buy an extra virgin olive oil that it's good. It tastes good. It should taste really, really good in the sense that if you were to just take a sip of it or taste it, you should be able to taste that flavor. What that means, though, is that I can't use it to deep fry anything. I can't use it to cook most hot items. It has a smoking point of about 350 to 375. That means that when I'm cooking, I need to find another oil. So then we go down to your other choices. And so your other choices are, for example, avocado oil, a refined olive oil, which does mean that it has been processed a little bit more than the extra virgin. Canola oil is also important if you can find it pressed. High oleic sunflower, safflower has the highest smoke point of 450. And so knowing these things, you can kind of choose which oils you are using for what items. The olive oil can get very pricey too. So definitely keep that aside for things that you might actually want to taste the olive oil for versus the avocado, canola, or the high oleic sunflower for things that you are actually cooking. What you do want to avoid, obviously, are trans fat, oils that you overheat, and excessive omega-6 without omega-3 balance. There are a lot of oils out there that are higher in omega-6 than omega-3, grapeseed being a great example of it. Most of these oils are. And so you want to make sure that you're balancing the 6 and the 3. And that might just be eating more salmon. But yeah, you just want to make sure that you know where your oils are coming from and how they're being heated. Now the fun part, flavor. Because I think herbs and spices and acids, people just think that they're adding in them for flavor, when in reality, there's actually a lot of cool research behind why we use these things. So these are the polyphenol powerhouses that you constantly hear about and we talk about a lot too. Turmeric, ginger, garlic, cinnamon, rosemary, oregano, thyme. All of these are ingredients that we actually use quite frequently if you think about it. And so having them in your back pocket, knowing that these flavors are actually benefiting you and providing flavor is really, really cool. Acids are also really important. They actually do support digestive function. And so taking a little bit of a shot of apple cider vinegar, you'll hear people take. All these things actually help us at the end of the day with how we are getting better. So better flavor definitely causes us to eat healthy. Using these things to enhance your foods will definitely be good overall. All right. So then let's talk about the gut. Because a lot of times we know that the gut is where things happen. And people will debate on and on about what actually happens in the gut. But I think there's some pretty cool evidence right now that we really need to take care of our gut in order for everything else to function correctly. If you've heard Dr. Katrina Whiteson talk, she often talks about fiber, and we want to make sure we do increase our fiber, but also realize that if you already have a lot of fiber, it's not really doing much good for you. And so it's trying to figure out what other foods you should be eating. But there's really interesting research just on fiber and how increasing it, mainly because we don't get enough of it, will be important overall. And so the diversity is very important when we talk about fiber. Obviously, I can't have you just eating brown rice or just eating beans. Well, one type of bean. You still do want to mix things up, because creating that mix of things also adds all the other things that we've talked about: healthy fats, the polyphenols from different foods. And so if you're just looking at fiber specifically, obviously you could just choose one thing, but the whole idea is eating all these diverse foods creates a greater diversity in your gut and correlates with healthier outcomes. You can also try some fermented foods that also are great for your gut: yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, and kombucha. So, what are the key takeaways? Every meal is a conversation and food is information. So it's almost like before you eat, really look at your plate. Try to figure out what it is that you're putting in your body before you actually put it in your body. And you'll start to realize patterns that you might have that are beneficial or detrimental. But I think it's really interesting that we need to actually start looking at what we're eating versus just stuffing it in our face. So again, choose patterns. I don't want you to say, I ate a salad this week and consider it perfection. That's not. What is perfection is, how do I actually add broccoli to every meal that I eat? It's the patterns versus the one-time perfection that's going to help create this consistency in your diet. It's also incredibly adaptable. Nothing that we've talked about is not culturally inclusive, in the sense that everything that I've said can be applied to every culture, in the sense that everybody has high fiber fruits and vegetables and good grains that they can add into their meal. And be realistic about it. It has to be stuff that you can find too. So if you are in Appalachia and you can't find, I don't know, like a Cara orange, don't beat yourself up about it. There's obviously other things that you can find that would be beneficial to you as well. So don't just avoid it just because you don't think you can find it. This eating pattern supports your cardiovascular health, metabolic health, immune function, brain health, healthy aging, and longevity. So everything about the Mediterranean diet does do that. Applying these in small steps will create larger changes. And so the whole idea is to realize what it is that you're putting in your body before you actually put it in. So now I am going to stop sharing and I am going to switch it over to show you some dishes. All right. All right, there we go. Hold on. If not. There we go. Nice. Okay. So I'm going to show 3 different dishes. All interesting things that haven't been done before, hopefully. And they're a lot of fun. So the first thing we're going to do is roasted radishes. Because I feel like there's a few things that are coming up in trends and foods this year. One of them being radishes. And they're so easy to work with and they're abundant. And so what you want to do with them is you can just grab radishes. And this is a great dish for people who just don't feel like they like radishes or they feel like, that they don't like radishes. The greens, you can wilt them. So you can just cook them in a little bit of water. But for the radishes, I'm going to take off the tops and then cut them in half. Obviously, if you want them even smaller than this, you can. They don't have to stay this large. But radishes are kind of spicy and they have a little bit of a bite to them. So this is a great way to use them and they grow pretty easily. So it's a sustainable vegetable to be using. It's kind of like I like talking about rutabaga because I like my root vegetables, but it has that kind of bite in this. They're like turnips. So I already made some ahead of time, but I wanted to show you. So you're just going to take your radishes and I am going to grab some oil. Rob, do you have any oil? All right, so I'm going to take a little bit of oil, and then I have some Aleppo pepper. I'm not going to use all of it because I don't need all of it. I'm not doing all of them. But the Aleppo pepper is not that spicy. It's kind of nice and smoky. So it's a great addition if you like, just kind of enhances everything. So I'm going to put them on a cookie sheet, but then I'm going to roast them until they're nice and toasty and brown, just like that. So after this is done, we're going to make a sauce for it. So the sauce for it is dill, which is it grows really easily. If you like dill, use it. I love dill, but I feel like it does have a tendency to overpower sometimes. So you do want to be careful with how much you use. But we're going to make a sauce with dill and mint. I'm going to take my dill and I'm going to chop it up just like that. And then I'm going to put it in a little bowl with some mint. And if you haven't grown your own mint, definitely start growing it. It's abundant. It grows really, really easily. So grow it in a pot too. Don't grow it with everything. Now, tahini is what we're going to be making the sauce with. Tahini is sesame seeds. And so it's just seeds that have been ground up. So we're going to add that in. And then we've got one small garlic clove too. And so when we were talking about Allison, the garlic, the more you chop it, the more Allison compound you get. The thing about Allison is that it needs to come back together. So it needs to kind of reconvene or come back after you chop it. So you usually want to let it set, like after chopping it, you want to set it aside from anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, just so that it gets its full effect. So I'm going to add that in. And then I've got a lemon too. So we're going to add lemon. And if you want, you can use lime. You can use any of those things. Just some kind of acid. But what happens when you add the lemon inside is it begins to seize. So the tahini can sometimes start seizing on you and kind of get hard. And if it does that, you can add a little bit of hot water So just add a little bit of water at a time. And then you've got a perfect sauce ready to go. And you can put this sauce on anything. You can put it on, what do I want to say? You can put it on fish. You can use it as a salad dressing. I'm going to add a little bit of salt in there. And then if you need, you can add a little bit of honey or maple syrup just to make it a little bit sweeter if you need. Then we're just going to grab a plate. And you can make this into a salad or something pretty, just like that. You can serve it with the sauce on the side or on top, up to you. And that's it. Nice and easy. And you're cooking the radishes just until they're soft. And you can flip them when you want. It helps to flip them just so that you get an even char on them. But that char, remember, is just the sugar is being drawn out. So it's really nice to have that flavor. Put that in there. All right. Now let's go over to our salmon. So we're going to do a poached salmon with a tahini miso lemon sauce. So we are working with a lot of tahini today. That's good. Clean up a little bit. Oh, no. Hold on one sec. I'm not sure. Oh, no, you are. I'm going to pin this. There we go. Okay. I didn't realize it wasn't pinning that. Okay, perfect. All right. So we're going to poach some salmon. The salmon we're making has miso in it. So we're going for more of an Asian kind of poaching liquid. So the poaching liquid that we have right here is water, a little bit of wine. You can skip out on the wine. You can even use sake if you want. Really up to you what you want to use. You can even use broth. But the whole idea is that I put ginger, peppercorns, some salt, and a few pieces of garlic and lemon inside. Now, it's just coming up to a simmer, and I want this liquid to kind of have flavor to it before I add the salmon in. Meaning, I'm going to let this kind of cook for about 5 to 10 minutes, which I already have, and then I'm going to put my salmon in. And you might need to add more water, which is completely okay. Or you're going to do what I'm going to do, which is put a lid on it. So that's going to cook in there for a little bit. I'm just letting it kind of come up. And then my lid, just another pot of the same size. It's really up to you what you want to use. You can even use a cutting board if you really wanted to. And we're going to cook that for about 3 to 4 minutes. Oh, no, sorry. About 6 to 8 minutes. And it'll depend on how thick it is, how long it'll cook. But again, you can eat salmon raw in reality, but you might need to cook it a little bit more, just depending on what it is that you like. So then to make the sauce, we are going to mix our ingredients together. So I've got a little bit of sesame oil. Then we have sesame seeds. And then our miso and tahini. Tahini has a tendency to collect on the bottom, so always give it a good stir. And I know it's frustrating sometimes when you buy tahini and it feels super stiff or like it's just not mixing out. I'm going to add the miso in now. That's completely that's what you're paying for. Those are the sesame seeds. So you actually want that because that's what you're paying for. That's the sesame seeds. Technically, you could, if you have a high-powered blender, you could make tahini at home too. If you're like me and you end up shopping at an Asian supermarket, they also have sesame paste, and Japanese supermarkets usually do as well. So then we're going to add some garlic in here. I am scraping with the back of my knife, not the front of it, in case you were hearing that. All right. And I had vinegar in there as well, sorry. So that you can add some rice vinegar in here. And again, if you need some kind of sweetness like maple syrup or honey, you can add that as well. Tahini does have a tendency to get a little bit bitter if you're not careful with it. Sorry, the shallot was supposed to go into the liquid, but I did not add it. The poaching liquid. All right, so I'm going to add 1 lemon. This one has started to seize up. If you feel like it's just not mixing too, sometimes using hot water versus cold water will help too. But it's just really about patience. It mixes in no matter what. You just got to work with it. So when you make hummus, sometimes it feels like you can't add enough liquid. You can start adding water. Don't keep adding olive oil. You can add water into it and it'll thin it out. This one needs more water. And again, you're mixing this just to the consistency that you want. Now, what's really cool about this is that you're not heating the miso up. And because you're not heating the miso up, you're going to get a lot more of the fermented properties out of it. Miso is really, really good for you. But a lot of fermented items, when you heat them or overheat them, you lose some of the properties. Miso can be one of those. But this is cool because you're eating it cold or you're using it cold versus heated. There you go. And again, this is going to need a little bit of salt. And then I'm going to chop up some scallions just as a garnish for when everything is done. Still not scraping, I promise. All right. Take my scallions, green onions, and I'm going to cut them on a diagonal, remembering the claw. Keep the claw. And you can use that still. But that will be for when the salmon is done. Not there yet. but you can see how it's turning colors. Okay, so I just want, this is a cool learning opportunity right now. A lot of people ask about the white stuff that comes up, whether it be chicken or salmon. That's just the protein. There's nothing wrong with it. It hasn't gone bad. There's nothing wrong with it. So there's nothing that you need to worry about. It's just the protein. So that's probably got another 2 or 3 minutes left on it. So while we're waiting on that, we're going to work on our last dish, which is our teff. And so this is an interesting one. Like I said, there's a lot of things coming up in the news, or not in the news, sorry, trends that are happening these days with grains, food in general. And one of them is teff. Teff is not easy to, I will be honest, I don't know where you can find it. I have a feeling you can find it at places like Whole Foods, or I don't know about Sprouts, Whole Foods or Mother's Market. But where I knew I would be able to get it was by around Irvine, there's Wholesome Choice, which is like the Mediterranean market. They have it there. And of all places, they don't sell it in the refrigerator. They don't sell it in like the grain section. It's in the section where there is spices. And so teff is an ancient grain. It's one of the oldest grains there is. It's incredibly small. It's in the same family as amaranth, and it's a seed. It's an ancient seed. It's nutty, a little bit bitter, but it can be used as pretty much polenta. So if you think of whatever you can use polenta for, you can use teff for. Now, it does have a little bit more of a bite, and it has more flavor than polenta does. Because if you think about it, polenta really doesn't taste like anything. Polenta just tastes like corn, or it's just, yeah, it doesn't have much flavor to it. This, on the other hand, does have, I don't want to call it bitter, but a little bit more of a bitter taste to it. You could wash it if you want, but washing it would be hard. You can. It's just hard to be able to keep all the seeds intact like this. And so you might lose some. There's no strainer that's fine enough for something like this. So washing it can get a little bit hard. You might just need to pour out the water. So we're going to make this the same way that you would make polenta. You can cook it like porridge too, if you think about it. So I have a little bit of chicken stock or veggie stock, whichever one you want to use here, coming up to a boil. And I'm going to add my teff right inside. And I'm going to cook this for about 17, 18 minutes, maybe up to 20. But the whole idea is we're going to get it nice and creamy, like a polenta, and don't splash like I do. It's just clumpy right now, so I'm just trying to spread it out. But I think I got it. Perfect. And that's going to come up to a boil. And then we're just going to slowly, slowly cook that. And so while that's cooking, I'll show you, because I already made it ahead of time, what it looks like. So I poured it into a container. I should have, like I was saying, so they sell these bags of teff, and it's about half a cup in each bag. You want these significantly thicker. So I poured mine in, and I should have made it a little bit thicker. But what ends up happening is you can pick it up like you would polenta. Mine hasn't been in the fridge. So, but if you put it in the fridge, they form into whatever shape you want them to. And then you can bake them. You can also pan fry them, just realizing that if you pan fry it, you might use a little bit more oil than you would normally like. I'm going to grab an extra, I'm going to rinse my hands really quick. All right. So we've got this going still. Good. And then I showed you what I did. And then I put them in the oven to cook, but they are still crisping up a little bit. So they'll look like this. They'll dry out. So the whole idea is we're drying out the extra liquid that's inside of them. And then they get kind of crispy on, oh, I don't think you can see over there. Here. So they get crispy on the outside and then they're nice and soft in the middle too. So you can eat them just exactly that way, or you can wait. You can eat it like the polenta form, or you can wait and cut it into shapes and then bake it or pan fry it a little bit more. All right. So before we move on to that though, I think the salmon is done. So we want to plate up the salmon before we move on. So the main thing about poached salmon, I feel like, is that it's not always the prettiest, but it's obviously one of the healthiest ways to eat it. So I'm just going to take a piece of it, just like that. The poaching liquid I wouldn't use. I mean, it's fishy, so I wouldn't use it again. But then I would take some of this sauce and pour it right on top, just like that. And then for a little bit of color, you could throw some green onions right on top. And then you could serve that with rice, broccoli rice. You can serve it with this teff if you wanted to. But then you have your salmon ready to go. All right. So last one are teff and the mushrooms. Okay, so the mushrooms are here. Move this. Let's talk about mushrooms really quickly. So this teff that we're making, I like serving polenta or like a lot of things with an array of sauteed mushrooms. Mushrooms, if you didn't know, don't belong in the vegetable family. They're actually a fungi. We in the culinary world have just put them under vegetables, but they're in a whole different world of their own. We just have brown creminis today, but you can really use any kind of mushroom that you have. You can even use white button mushrooms. Creminis are just baby portobellos. And so, again, talking about colors and things like that, obviously, what's cool about the brown mushroom versus the white mushroom is how much vitamin D it has. So, mushrooms need to grow with sunlight or some kind of light. And so the reason why the white ones stay white are just because they don't have as much access to light as these guys do. What they've realized is because of the brown, the vitamin D content actually goes up. And so if you like mushrooms, the brown ones do have that little bit extra of vitamin D versus the other ones. We're going to make the mushrooms with a lot of herbs. And so one of the things I want to show you is that when you have herbs, and you're going to add them into the polenta too, you can take thyme. So this is French thyme, and you can find a strainer, and then you can thread it like needle and thread, just like this. And that way it catches your thyme for you and makes life a lot easier and saves you time. All right. The other way you can do this is you can put it in your freezer. And then if you put it in your freezer, the leaves will start falling off when you rub the bag together. So just like that. All right. And then we have a shallot. We have some rosemary too. The rosemary I will chop up. The rosemary grows up like this, so I just pull on the opposite direction. Get everything together and chop away. Again, remembering your claw the whole time so you don't take off your fingers. If it helps sometimes, I always tell people to take this hand and put it behind their back. If you have a tendency to want to like move the food while you chop, maybe you don't. All right. And then I'm going to use one shallot, but if you can use more. So shallots are great because they are spicy. So they have a really strong flavor versus a regular onion. But if you don't have a shallot, you can use an onion. You can use more garlic. It's a French thing, I find, but I love shallots. But I don't like peeling them like most people do. So if you're like me, growing up in Asia, we actually use a lot of shallots, but the shallots that they have in Asia are small and round. They're really, really small. It's a lot more work to peeling and handling them than these guys. And so I just like these a lot more, the French shallots, just because they're larger. All right. So I'm going to take off. So it's how you would cut an onion. So slice and slice, the finer, the better. Right. And then we have our thyme leaves, rosemary, and then a little bit of Rob, can you grab me some balsamic? It should be there. Is there? Yes. Sweet. Okay. Nice. So I am going to add oil first. And so, yeah, what oil do we use in here? We usually try to use a canola, a pressed canola, or olive oil. So those are the two that we have on hand usually. But it's very hard to control an electric stove, which is what we use. And so finding something that can withstand the heat is sometimes a lot easier. All right. There we go. Thank you. All right. So we're going to saute that a little bit just until it's fragrant. And then add the mushrooms. So the whole goal when you're cooking mushrooms like this is to find a large enough pan and not to stir it too many times. Mushrooms all contain liquid inside of them. And the whole idea is you want to be able to release the liquid. Like you want the mushrooms to release their liquid and then to dry it back up. And so the whole idea is to let it do its work. Excuse me. And then you can go in and stir every once in a while. I'm just showing you the teff. So if you think about it, it does. It looks exactly like polenta does in its consistency. And so if you just pour it into something and let it sit for a little bit, it will definitely hold its shape. When that's done, we're going to add some nutritional yeast and smoked paprika and some thyme as well. That'll all flavor it to give it more of that kind of cheesy polenta flavor. All right. So I feel like they're going to get a little squeaky on me, the mushrooms are. So I'm going to go in and cook them down. But you can see all that liquid is starting to come out. And that's how they're going to brown now in a little bit. That excess moisture is going to cook out. And we're going to get it all in there. And I'll show you what the teff looks like now that's been in here. I definitely could have let them firm up a little bit more before, but if you look, they pick up really easily and they're nice and creamy in the middle. And then you can use these as little things to serve your mushrooms on. I think those are pretty much there. I'm going to flip them around so that I can cook the back of them. But it's a cool ingredient to start using if you can find it. And if not, you can just use polenta. You could even use amaranth. All right, now we're in business. So the mushrooms are pretty much there. You can probably do it a little bit longer if you wanted. They're just going to keep releasing a little bit more liquid and then brown up a little bit more too. So I'm going to add my rosemary and thyme. And then I have some chives that's going to go into the teff. But again, if you wanted to add it into the mushrooms, you could add it into the mushrooms too. And if you don't have chives, you can use scallions or green onions. It's just a spicy kind of green flavor to add into things. This teff is almost there. And the mushrooms are good. You could deglaze this pan with wine or stock, really up to you. But I'm going to also add a little bit of balsamic vinegar to finish it off. But you could use veggie stock. The cool thing about using vinegar of any kind in cooking is that it cleans pots and pans for you. I'm going to turn it off. So if you ever have a pan that's just sticking or things don't want to move, that's why white wine is always your best friend. Just because white wine will actually help you remove because of the acidity that's inside of there. So now that's the last dish. Grab the teff polenta. Oops. That was the one that was breaking. There we go. I keep breaking them. There we go. Just going to spoon it in the middle. Just like that. Or again, you can serve it with the polenta in the sense of it being creamy. Hold on, I'm going to close this oven. And then show you for the rest of this teff. It does start to stick after a little bit, so you want to be careful. You want to stir. I'm going to add my paprika and my thyme and my nutritional yeast just in there. And chives. And that's it. So the other way you could serve this is you could serve it creamy like this with the mushrooms right on top. And I'll do that too. And there you are. Little teff polenta with mushrooms on top. So thank you for joining in, and hopefully you'll try some of these recipes. Bye.